Welcome to RSG Insider, where we discuss issues facing local jurisdictions. My name is Tara Matthews, a partner at RSG, and I'm joined today by Suzy Kim, a director at RSG, to talk about residential relocation. Welcome, Suzy, to our podcast. Maybe before we get started, you can just give us a little bit better understanding of your experience and background in residential relocation.
Yeah, so I've worked with RSG for 18 years, and throughout my time here, I've worked on a variety of relocation projects, both residential, commercial, and industrial. Everything from moving just one tenant to making a plan for over 150 units.
Can you talk a little bit about what residential relocation is?
Yeah, so state law provides a lot of protections for tenants who are displaced, either due to public agency activity or development. And it requires a series of notices as well as referrals to meet their needs that you determine through an interview. And then they also get relocation payments to help them with differences between their current rent and their new rent.
So there's like a set of state and federal regulations that have to be followed when a jurisdiction goes through this process. And so it sounds like you help navigate through that. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. We help our clients understand all the requirements and help them implement them.
So residential relocation requires following a lot of legal requirements and legislation, and it sounds really in depth and hands-on. If you could give some advice to our clients that may be getting ready to do a residential relocation project, what would that be?
Yeah, so first and foremost, it's really important to start from a place of empathy and treat the residents with compassion. Even though there are all these complicated laws to follow, we're at the end of the day, we're dealing with people, and it's a very stressful situation. So we want to make sure that we treat them with compassion. Second, it's really important to know the law to make sure that you're doing everything that you need to do. There were a lot of changes in the law, especially in the last 5 years, which can be very complicated to navigate. So it's important to check all those boxes as well. And then third, if possible, building in extra time and budget to your process is really helpful. The law typically requires 90 days or less notice, but oftentimes that's not enough time for residents, especially if they have different challenges. So it's important to have a contingency plan to build in extra time if possible.
Yeah, it's like a lot of moving pieces because you're dealing with residents that are being displaced from their home, which is, a very challenging process. You have a jurisdiction that is trying to make sure they're taken care of while, meeting all of these legal requirements. And the housing market in California it's not a surprise to anyone, it's very, very tight right now. So I'm sure that trying to find replacement housing is a challenge as well. So it sounds like you've been working on these for 18 years. You had mentioned some of the projects that you've worked on in the past. Do you have any memorable projects or anything that kind of sticks out for you over the years?
Yeah, absolutely. The projects that are most meaningful for me are the ones where I was able to make a connection with the residents that I'm helping relocate. In San Carlos and San Pablo in particular, I developed a really close relationship with the tenants. I drove them to look at new apartments, help them talk to landlords, and fill out their applications. And we spent a lot of time in the car together and got to know a lot about their lives and even meet their family members. So that was really special. And then there was another project in Lake Forest where one of the tenants was able to take their relocation assistance and apply it to a down payment on a home. So that was definitely very rewarding.
Yeah, it sounds like you really went above and beyond. I mean, driving people to look at replacement housing options typically isn't part of the normal scope. So it sounds like you kind of went above and beyond to do that in that case. Sometimes it takes some creativity in these situations to try to help the residents as much as possible. So getting back to the people part of it, relocation is a very emotional process. I would imagine if this was occurring to me and somebody came to where you were living and said, hey, there's a project that's going to be happening here and you're going to have to move, that I would be very overwhelmed and scared. Can you talk a little bit about, how do you engage with residents throughout this process?
That's a really good question. I always want to communicate to the residents that I understand this big impact that this has on their lives and that I acknowledge it's a very stressful and scary situation. So I make sure that they understand their rights and the process, and we try our best to provide referrals that don't disturb their lives so that they're able to continue working at their same job and ensure that their kids are going to the same school, and just making sure we're meeting all of their needs.
Yeah, I imagine that's like a difficult or challenging part of it, because you may have someone that's lived somewhere for quite a while. They may have kids that go to school nearby or work nearby, and trying to find something comparable in the same area could be difficult at times. And, kind of adding to this, when you're looking for a replacement housing for them to move in, we already kind of talked about, housing costs in California are extremely high. Many people are facing housing instability issues. So when you're having to find options or look for replacement housing for lower income tenants, so, those that per state guidelines would qualify kind of for like affordable housing projects and programs that can't afford market rate rents. How do you address that? How do you overcome that type of challenge?
Yeah, the lower income tenants are definitely the most challenging to relocate, especially if they're coming from a unit that's restricted as affordable, or if they have a Section 8 voucher, because affordable housing is in such short supply, and there's often discrimination against Section 8 voucher holders. And I found that it really helps to, one, build in that extra time and budget that we were talking about earlier. We also provide a letter that the tenants can take to appointments with their landlords that describes the financial benefits that that will help them to pay their rent. And then oftentimes I'll go with them and talk to their landlords face to face. So it provides some legitimacy, that they understand it's not some weird scam, especially in this day and age. And then we can even offer to pay multiple months of rent up front, which comes out of their relocation assistance. So it's important to just remain flexible and get creative.
It sounds like a lot of creativity is needed sometimes to be able to properly house people, especially when their income is restricted. You touched upon it a little bit in the beginning. Relocation law has been around for decades, so this isn't a newer concept, but how have you seen residential relocation change over the years? You've been in the industry for 18 years, working on a variety of relocation projects. So how have you seen that landscape shift over time?
Yeah, there was definitely a big shift around 2019 when the Housing Crisis Act passed. In the past, we were mainly just working with public agency clients who had to provide relocation benefits. But now private developers are having to comply with relocation requirements as well. So we're working with a lot more developers, both nonprofit and market rate. And anytime they are displacing a tenant or removing housing from the market, they need to provide relocation benefits. So we help navigate all those laws. And then for cities, it's really important for them to understand those laws as well, because they are not allowed to approve a development project unless developers are complying with their relocation obligations. So cities can put a plan in place to understand what those are and review a project.
So it like really shifted from just being something that public agencies had to deal with to now kind of expanding that to the development community as well. And it sounds like there's more coordination and partnership needed between the development community and the public agency, because you had mentioned like the approval process for permitting and such. So that's interesting. I imagine that it ensures that more people are receiving proper relocation benefits from development. So, as a practitioner in the field, what do you find most rewarding about this process? We've talked a lot about the challenges, right? There's a lot of challenges. But, what do you find rewarding about the process?
Yeah. In a funny way, the challenges are what turn out to be the most rewarding because you're starting from a place of somebody who's very stressed and scared. It's very emotional labor because you're managing people's emotions. But at the end of the day, the tenants often end up in a better place and they're extremely grateful for our help. Just making that connection with the residents and knowing that I help them through this really difficult process is rewarding.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it really is about the people. Well, thank you so much for joining today and sharing all of your knowledge. And thank you for tuning in today.